we're going down two different paths. What can we do to pull it back together? What are some things that we can actively do right now?
Welcome to the Kickass Couples Podcast. This is the place where we help committed couples who want to level up their marriage experience newfound clarity, hope, and confidence. We're Matthew and Kim, co-hosts and husband and wife.
In 26 years together, we've seen a lot and never thought it could be as good as it is right now. We're here to help you successfully navigate the messy, dirty, and wonderful world of marriage.
We believe all couples deserve and are capable of experiencing an extraordinary and fulfilling marriage. And each week, we're bringing you life lessons from real-life successful couples to help you grow and strengthen your relationship.
And now, back to the show.
The future of your relationship is not carved in stone. With a little bit of effort and foresight, you can take control of your relationship and make it strong enough to withstand even the most difficult of storms. Join Kim and me and a special guest expert as we dive into the secrets of how to divorce-proof your relationship and keep it thriving for years to come. Andrea Morgan is a divorce attorney whose passion for supporting families in transition and restructure has been her life's purpose. Andrea believes in the sanctity of marriage and counsels her clients to turn over every stone before resorting to divorce, particularly when children are involved. She is an agent of social change in her field because of her commitment to use collaborative, cooperative, and mediated divorce processes as best methods to preserve the emotional, psychological, and financial health of the family. Come along on an insightful journey filled with golden nuggets of wisdom that will help keep your marriage clear of relationship-ending conflicts and even divorce, and keep you heading toward your own relationship nirvana. Welcome back, everybody, to the Kickass Couples Podcast. We are looking forward to a special episode today, really titled How to Divorce-Proof Your Marriage. And joining us to talk about the ins and outs and what you can do to keep on the right side of marriage is Andrea Morgan. Welcome, Andrea. We are so glad to have you with us today.
Thank you, Matt and Kim. I'm really happy to be here. And I'm actually this is going to sound twisted, but I am that divorce attorney that loves when people can avoid it, when they can work through whatever their issues is. Absolutely. Have lots of thoughts on the matter, but I will let you open with any.
Beautiful. Well, you have a unique perspective, because I would like to, if you could share with us a little bit of your history and experience. You know, it's kind of like people say the D word because it's like Voldemort, right? You don't want to say his name because if you say it, it might become real. People hate to say the word divorce. And when we're talking to couples, we say there's a lot of things you can do so you never have to. So tell me about share with our listeners what your perspective is and how you got into doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I have a few really interesting points on that. First of all, in almost every divorce I've ever handled, with rare exception, only one person wants the divorce. The other person doesn't want the divorce. And what always strikes me is that if the person who doesn't want the divorce is blindsided, the person wanting the divorce should have done their due diligence and said, listen, when you do XYZ, it really makes my blood run cold. And if we don't work on it, we're not going to, we've got to work on it together.
Right.
And that doesn't happen a whole lot, to be in perfect candor. What I also find fascinating is a statistic that has proven true over and over and over again. The amount of time that passes by when it pops into one person's head, usually one spouse, the D word, I call it that too, is an act in furtherance, meaning picking up the phone, calling a lawyer, or doing some online research, or hiring a lawyer is the best example of the step in furtherance, is 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
So what I find really fascinating is there was a window that the leavee, I call it the leavor and the leavee, the one leaving and the one being left, if they had known the grievances that were slowly brewing over these 3 to 5 years, that marriage could have been saved in most cases. In most cases. But people tend to sweep their stuff under the rug. I mean, I love your 3 C's and I love your 14 pillars. It is so true. If the spouse that is blindsided had a clue or was given an opportunity, and I'm talking about more subtle issues. I'm not talking about, the bigger ones where there's substance abuse or a person who has mental health challenges that refuses to get therapy. And I'd love to get an opportunity to talk about cheating, if there is time.
Yeah, we'll get there. And so you talked about stats, and I want to kind of share, in case you didn't know, you probably know a lot of this, and I think in our previous conversations we touched on it. There's some stats on divorce in our country right now. About 90% of people in Western culture, they marry by age 50. That means 90% of the people that we're living in this continent get married before they're 50. But every 13 seconds, there's a divorce in the US. Every 13 seconds. So in the time that we've been talking today, a dozen people have already gotten divorced, right? And in the United States, the old stat was 50%, meaning you had a 50-50 chance if you got married of making it. And it even got, I think, a little worse in most recent years. And the scarier stat, people go, I was with the wrong person. And that does happen sometimes, right? Sometimes we don't get it right for one reason or another. But the stats on second and third marriages just get worse. 60% in second and almost 70% of third.
It's strange, isn't it? You would think just the opposite. You would think just the opposite. And the prevention of divorce, like the pre-treatment, I call it, where people are involved and wise enough to go talk to someone like you guys and to make sure their visions and ideals for the future are aligned. None of us have crystal balls and know which way we're going to end up growing, but just acknowledging there's going to be change, there's going to be growth. And in the event either of you start feeling like it's going like this, that's the time to address it. If people can be told that before they're married, get that good premarital professional to talk about these things. Because there will be times where it is not blissful. There will be huge challenges. And what I admire so much about what you guys do is you teach people how to work through those.
Right.
Yeah, getting help is critical when you get to that stage and when it's necessary. I want to back up just a little bit because you've had a ringside seat for many years to uncoupling. So I'd be really interested to know from you, Andrea, what do you see as maybe the leading cause of divorce? What do you see repeated over and over again in your practice as being a cause for divorce?
Trust and honesty, which links directly to, you guys, 3 C's, communication. Over and over and over again, I see it time and time and time again. And although there's no fault in this, I do not judge. I just help people through miserable circumstances. That's how I see it, that I liberate people when it's right for them to divorce, when they've had marital counseling. And even the counselor, my counselor said, we have no business being in a marriage together. But that those 3 to 5 years, and I ask every single client says the same thing. So if either the person I'm representing could have said, hey, 3 to 5 years ago, this is what's going on in my head. And these are the things that I see that, we both need to work on. Don't ever do that. You do this and you never do that. You always do this. Steer clear of that and make sure that we all have stories in our head. None of us know if they're true. The only way to find out is to talk about it, is to communicate about it. I have had a couple of cases, not a lot. I wish I've had more, where people discovered their love for each other, like it reinvigorated it going through the divorce process and dawns on them, oh my gosh, I don't want to not be with this person ever, forever, and it dawns on them that one or the other, both were just going through some kind of existential crisis or hit a wall that they didn't think they were going to be able to,
Sure.
repair.
So what I heard you
Um,
say is that communication is huge and it's the trust
Huge.
and honesty. So there's not truthful and honest communication about what's going right, what's going wrong, or what needs to be done. And you've probably heard the expression, and I'll share it again. People don't get divorced for conversations they had. It's for conversations they've never had.
Right.
And
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
I'm going to ask Kim, I'm going to kind of turn the tables a little bit. So we heard you say communication. Kim, what do you think is the number one reason that people are getting divorced, if you had to, or from your experience or your perception?
I would have to say that the lack of commitment to doing the work that it takes to stay married, that would be probably my answer. I think that too many of us get married and we go through that warm and fuzzy stage. And then when we get to, we're in it a couple of years, maybe we've even started having children, and it gets a little bit more difficult. And I think that people just, they forget to be committed to doing the work that it takes day in and day out to stay together. And as we know, it's not easy. And I think some people sadly are just ignorant. They don't know any better.
Right.
They haven't learned what it takes. So let me ask you, Matthew, what do you think it takes to stay together?
Yeah. Well, I think to me, it's prioritization, and it ties into some of the communication that you shared. That's critical. Communication is that glue that kind of goes through and ties everything together. And if you don't have good communication, it's never going to happen. But I think commitment's like that cornerstone, right? If it's in place, I think it's an issue of prioritization. I think that if a relationship's not working, it's because one or both people, it's a two-way street. It's not like one's an angel and one's the devil, right? And I'm sure when people come to you, Andrea, it's not like, oh, all the issues are with one person. And there's always, even if the other person's like, I'm blindsided, I didn't know. It's like, well, wait a minute, why didn't you know? Right? Hold on. You got to take some accountability, but I think it's
It takes
prioritization.
two to tango. That's right. It's never completely one person's fault. Never.
Never. Yeah. And I think it's prioritization because if I am putting anyone or anything ahead of her. Now, I'm not talking about, spiritually or, yeah, I mean, we're devout Christians, and that's a huge part of who we are. Our faith and moral code is one of our pillars. So she knows God comes first, but the first human is her. I didn't put a friend, another family member, not our kids, not somebody at work, not somebody in the community. There is no one or no thing more important than her. And I think if more people were willing to be more selfless and thinking of what can I do for my partner as opposed to, well, what have they done for me lately? And, how come they're not
That's
meeting
true.
my needs, right?
So very true.
Yeah, yeah. Are you tired of feeling like you're living with a roommate instead of a lover? Do you miss the days when you were completely into each other, intellectually, emotionally, and physically? The truth is, many couples are struggling behind closed doors. Putting on a brave face for the rest of the world is exhausting. If you want to get back your joy, return to thriving, and take pleasure in your marriage, then Kickass Couples Coaching and Matthew P. Hoffman are here to help. Join us alone or with your partner and start taking steps towards overcoming the pain-filled obstacles and improving your relationship right now. For a limited time, we're offering a free relationship assessment call. Go to MatthewPHoffman.com/coaching to book your free call now so you can start making real changes in your most important relationship today.
Does your partner feel heard? Does your partner feel prioritized? Does your partner feel safe in the relationship? And Kim, I love you said it so eloquently. The I'm not going to blame the internet and these platforms and stuff, but they have not helped. You know, it's easy to forget that you have someone very special. Here's how I explain it to some people that need to hear it. There are approximately 8 billion people on the planet. Out of all those people, how many did you have a dating relationship with? Okay, now we're getting into double digits normally. If someone dated a lot before marriage. Okay, so out of those 20 people, how many of those people did you have sexual intimacy with? Okay, so the number gets smaller. And out of those people, how many did you marry? And so once they see it that way, it clicks that this is an important sacred alliance. This didn't just happen by accident. I'm very much, I'm faith-based as well. I have a little fish because my marker wouldn't let me do anything bigger than that, but there's a little fish symbol on the left ribbon of my website. And I had to fight for that. But the tenets of the law of the universe, the laws of the universe, of natural laws, that's your mate. That's not somebody you should just kick to the curb over some small transgression, because we are all humans.
Right.
And I've written several articles on what you don't see in couples that are what you see in couples that are not on the divorce path.
Yeah. So I got a question for you, Andrea. So we talked earlier about, you said a lot of people, something that you shared with us was a lot of people, when they come into your office, one of them says, gosh, I never saw it coming. Let's address that issue and that elephant. So is that really realistic? How can one person in a relationship, if they're sitting in your office saying, one of them's going, I got to get away from this person, how can that other person can they truthfully say, I mean, it's certainly how they feel, but is there truth in that one person in this relationship can never see it coming? Talk to me about that.
It's a very good question, because once you get to know someone really well, it's like I'm married to my client for the months that we're going through this process together. There have been cases, very few, where the other spouse just turns on them like a dime, and there truly is there's no closure, there's no finding out what happened. We don't know if there was another person involved. They're just pack up their stuff, move out, and I hear from their attorney, and my client is sobbing on the phone. Another thing I've learned, people think of women as being, the ones that are so traumatized. It's traumatizing for both the Libor and Levy. But I have had grown alpha male Marine type, sobbing that their wife told them they want a divorce. And I believe in these instances, without using any judgment, the person in that position of being blindsided must have been doing this, because it took the person leaving them 3 to 5 years to take a step in furtherance. So I agree with you. Sometimes it's because the person just can't see how, or doesn't care how their behaviors or actions are affecting their spouse.
Right.
And they just are blind to it. However, I have had those cases where the more I dug in, it was really true. It was a total mystery why the other spouse wanted a divorce. Like, I can think of, out of the thousands of cases I've had, 3 cases where the spouse I represented had no idea, and it was never uncovered during the process. It was never
That sounds like it's a minority, right? You're saying, yeah. You're saying
away.
like that doesn't happen very often. So in most cases, there's some awareness, or if they think about it.
If they think about it, they figure it out, or I help them figure it out, or they learn through the divorce process. Many times they figure out what it was.
Right.
And I've had people ask for second chances once they understood what it was. And in this one particular case I'm thinking of, it was refused. But I have seen people have an awakening about their actions and behavior in driving their spouse away
Right.
during the process. So since your vantage point is what can we do to keep it from getting to that point? And if you're teaching people, which I know you are, about the importance of the commitment, about the importance of communication, about the importance of trust and honesty, then that's going to spare a lot of people,
Sure.
I,
Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's break that down a little bit. What are, for our listeners that are struggling, they are finding themselves in this place of we're going down two different paths. What can we do to pull it back together? What are some things that we can actively do right now to help us get to a better place? What are some of those things, Matthew, that we
Yeah.
could start doing? Let's start just spouting off some of those.
Well, it's interesting because a lot it kind of doesn't matter what the reason is. Some people say it could be, let's say, one of them saying, well, there's financial issues. So whatever it is that you're
common.
angry is not happening in the relationship. I'm going to pick financial. So that's something that people argue about a lot. He's such a spender. Oh my gosh, she holds her wallet in her backside and she won't even spend a dime on XYZ. She's so stingy, right? So whatever the issue is, I think it comes back to communication. So if finances, if and that's a symptom. People don't get divorced because of
That's right.
finances.
It's because they're not having conversations.
They're not having a conversation about their money stories. Everybody brings, man, we talk about this a lot, Andrea, and I'm sure you see it in your practice. People bring baggage to the relationship. I got mine, she has hers. And the question is, we don't have to get rid of the baggage, is we got to understand what baggage you're bringing and how do we deal with it? And what are her triggers? What's things she's concerned about? Am I meeting her needs? And likewise. So, Kim, I think discussion about finances, for example.
Back to communication.
Yeah, it's back to
And
communication.
ability within that communication, I would have to say, is so important. We have to be willing to come with our total open truth, right?
Yeah.
About what we're
Yeah.
thinking, how we're feeling. So vulnerability is huge. I also think that there are other things that we can do to foolproof our marriage. I think we need to be dating each other constantly. I think we need to be having a dreaming together and
Oh, the love magic is critical.
yeah,
And the
exactly.
little things and the thoughtful things and
Right. Being thoughtful, showing gratitude and appreciation. Often there's so many things that I think that we don't do. When I said getting back to commitment and doing the little things, it's the little things every day that make a difference in our relationship.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
when someone's feeling cherished and respected and heard, then that's going to be a person in a happy marriage.
Yeah.
Their
Love your word
spouse is
choice.
assisting them in feeling those positive feelings that keep them married. And so appreciate the idea that you guys have, what I think I'm coining this term, a continuum of learning and support for someone over the span of their marriage, because of course there are going to be things that are like, oh my God, this is huge. This is going to blow this whole thing up. But if they know where to go first and try to communicate, trust, and be honest with each other, and they try that first, um, I think a lot of marriages could be saved. I see so much pride, at the root of divorce, so much,
And I want to dig into that a little bit. You say pride, and it's interesting because pride means self. It doesn't mean self-respect, self-love, and cherish. We have to respect ourselves in a relationship because otherwise we're doormats and I'm not deserving and I've got to give and I've got to do. Well, wait a minute, what about me? It doesn't mean me first, but self-care is good. But pride is very different than self-care. Pride is saying, I'm more important. I'm more deserving. I bring more, I do more, or I'm better in the relationship than they are, right? And it's kind of that self-importance thing. It's not, one of our pillars is servant leadership, and pride is the opposite of that. Servant leadership is what can I do to pour into the person I love and care for that I said I do to. That's servant leadership. Pride is, what are they going to do for me? How can they recognize my value, right? And make me go higher? And that's, that's kind of could even step into narcissism in some relationships. So
Right. And yes, absolutely it does. And in my industry, when it's the leavee, the person being left, being so prideful about it, I often wonder, well, if they didn't have so much ego and pride about, well, fine, you don't want to be married to me, fine. When you know they are not fine, they are so far from fine that they're sobbing. The first couple weeks that I have them as a client, they are sobbing their hearts out. That is coming from somewhere. To me, it just screams this marriage could be saved. If someone is that broken about the prospect of losing their wife or husband, to me, is just a huge red light that this marriage probably could be saved.
sure.
And I'm more than happy to refer them to your retreats. And this is something that I didn't really have a chance to find out. Do you do pre-retreats? Do you do before people get married assistance?
Yeah, we do. It's interesting you brought that up. So we have a KCN coaching, Kickass couples coaching, and that can happen at any point in a relationship. It can happen to somebody that is early on, we're dating and we're gonna get married, or we just got married, and it lays the foundation because it's really based on those things that we've been talking about today: commitment, communication, and conflict resolution. Those 3 C's. And when you're young, you kind of don't know what you don't know. And you have to learn how to learn. Like, okay, how are we going to relate in our relationship? Some people don't ever learn that. I was speaking to a client earlier today who is 62, and they're older, and they said, man, I've gotten it wrong and I want to get it right. And I want to, the last 25 or 30 years, 20% of my life, I want it to be in a great relationship that I love and I'm cherished and I get what I need. And I want to give what they need, help me do that. So
God hears that, but that is a starting point. And I don't know if you're familiar with a very famous podcaster, Lewis Howes, School of Greatness.
yeah, he's great.
He was a man who was I hate that word too. What his pattern was that he just would let a woman walk all over him. So after it happened multiple times, he saw the pattern. He's a smart man. He went and dove into the therapies that were necessary for him to learn his self-worth, to learn he deserved someone's respect. And he said, I thought was so cute. He said he was not even going to date it was actually a pretty long time. He was just going to focus on what's on the inside that's causing this pattern for, I think he said 3 years. He was a very young man when he discovered that, hey, I see this pattern. So it's funny that within a year of him, intensive therapy, a couple times a week, I can't remember the other things he was doing, but a lot to get over this false personal belief that he had about himself, that he wasn't worthy.
Yeah.
And within a year, he meets his fiance, Martha. She's amazing. They decided to go to Sedona and have this a retreat, a premarital retreat, and talk over what their visions were for the future and growth.
They're investing.
Well, and
If that were to happen more, if that were to happen more, people getting married, as I tell people, this is, God is my witness, Scarlett O'Hara style. I love when people don't get divorced. When I meet someone, and I tell them, if I've not met him before, I'm an anthropologist, because I really feel like I'm more of an anthropologist than a divorce attorney. It's, people's interactions are so fascinating to me, and people are just so fascinating to me. But when I meet somebody new, before I tell them the truth of what I do, not that I'm ashamed of it, I feel I am a liberator of people in miserable circumstances that can't be solved otherwise.
Sure.
Before I handed my card, I said, my hope is that you never have to use this. Anyone you know, or any of your friends, or any of your family. I never have to hear from you. But if I do, you're going to have someone in your corner who's compassionate and experienced and gets you through this out and on to the other side of life.
Are you struggling to maintain the emotional and physical intimacy you once shared? Do you feel like you're spending more energy finding fault and tearing your partner down instead of magnifying their good and building them up? Don't worry, you're not alone. Many couples are struggling behind a forced smile and an inauthentic happiness. You feel drained, unheard, and more often than not, unappreciated. The good news is it's not too late to rekindle the flame and strengthen your bond. I'm offering a free relationship assessment call to help you take the first step towards revitalizing your relationship and reaching your own relationship nirvana. Whether you come alone or with your partner, I'm here to help you create the space for a more fulfilling and satisfying relationship. Don't wait any longer. Make the changes you need to thrive. Book your free call today at matthewphoffman.com/coaching. And let's get started on your journey to a kick-ass relationship.
I love what you said, and I love that you used Lewis Howes as an example because I do like him very much. And I
Yeah,
think
that's
what
great.
Lewis did, and I want our listeners to hear this, I think what Lewis really did was Lewis started working on himself.
Yes.
He became the very best version of Lewis
Yes.
could be. And I really believe that when we're in a relationship and it's going south, if we can really work on ourselves and continue to grow ourselves, and even if our spouse maybe in that moment isn't willing to come along, but they see the change in us, they see the behavior,
Yes.
they see all of these great things that their spouse is striving to do, and it's attractive, and they're thinking, wow, I want some of that. And so
Right. I don't want to lose this.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose this.
believe that,
You know?
yes, part of that is really healing, and that is personal growth.
Yeah, and I want to follow up on that. What Kim said, Andrea, and you brought out as well, is in your story about Lewis, he did such a beautiful job of two things. He knew he was deserving of a good relationship.
Right.
That's self-belief and self-worth, and that he was capable. So everybody that we talk to and work with has to believe I'm deserving. I deserve this, and I'm capable, meaning
Bingo.
I've got it. It just has to be brought out. It's kind of like a flower. When a flower is, before it buds, if you go out and try to rip the petals open because you want to see how pretty it is, you're going to kill the flower. But if you nurture it and feed it the right conditions, it's going to bloom. We all have that internal capacity that we're capable and deserving. And the other thing I want to follow up on, and I think we all of us have mentioned this today, is in a relationship, you are only responsible for you and what you do. I can't make Kim do anything. I can't say you have to, you gotta. I can say in our relationship, this is what I need from you. These are my needs, and I hope you're willing to give me what I need so I can be my best. And then she's going to say the same thing to me and say, okay, this is what I hear you saying. Yep, that's right. Let me clarify. For me to be the
Ditto.
best person I can be. And then what do I need to do for you? So all I can control, I got to communicate and have the conversation, but then I just got to work on delivering to her what she needs. Period. That's all I can do. And then we get that spillover and that goodness. She's pouring into me so much. Oh my gosh. Our contest, the competition we have with each other is who can love the other one better. That's the competition we have. Not I'm great.
And it's
I'm
not
smarter.
quote,
It's
I
not
got
about I'm right. So you're so right about that. You're so right about that. There was a thought that I had around that topic. Okay, in Florida where I practice, there is no legal acknowledgement of a separation. But depending on the circumstances, the client, and how their spouse is treating them, I recommend one. I mean, is there family you could go and just spend some time to process what's going on, then regroup with knowledge, work on yourself, Go find a therapist if you haven't already. Talk these things through a psychologist who specializes in family therapy and counseling, and give it a break before you go doing something permanent.
Sure.
And this happens a lot in the context of cheating. And I know at some point you didn't want to hit on that. I don't know if that's now, but I've written an article. Yeah, if your spouse is cheated, don't immediately think you have to go run and get a divorce,
Right.
because there's
It's
so
interesting.
Yeah,
You
infidelity.
mentioned earlier, infidelity is huge, and and cheating too, and that gets back to what I'm going to do a comeback to trust, right? Trust and security, and you know you can. It takes a long time to build up trust, years, lots of deposits, but
true
one
plus
act,
time equals trust.
yeah, like one
There's
act of cheating or infidelity just wipes that account out. And it's really up to the individual. You know, you kind of ask the question, and can people recover from cheating? Absolutely, you can, but
Yes,
it
they
takes
can.
people. I mean, one person's got
Oh
to
yeah.
own it and say, "Man, I screwed up, and I did it. I'm going to ask you to forgive me. Give me the chance to show you, to demonstrate. It's not just I'm one and done, and we're back, and the trust is there, right? But it can be recovered from if you work to rebuild that trust. And it's not just words. Words are important, but it's demonstrated action consistently over
Over
time.
time. Yeah.
And
And I would say that, in infidelity, that it's never okay. I'm not condoning the cheater, but usually the other person, the other party had something to do with that person's decision.
That's right. That's in my
Come back to
yes.
couple,
You
right?
gotta look in the mirror. You
Right.
gotta look in the
There were
mirror
issues
also.
there. Not that it was right, but there were issues there that led those people apart from one another. And so really getting back to what those issues are is so important. Cheating aside, what's the root of our challenge here?
yeah.
Yes.
And that kind of begs the question. And I want to ask you, do you think it is ever too late to come back from the brink of divorce? And then based on that answer, if so, what would it take? Like, do you feel like, oh my gosh, it's impossible to come back when people think one or the other or both, we need to get divorced? Do you think it's possible to recover from that? And what has to be present for that to happen?
That is a tough question. I mean, it is and it isn't, because I know what I think about it. There are certain actions people can take that can utterly do this. There's no save, there's no therapy that's going to fix it. It just quashes the marriage. Typically, it involves substance abuse where there's been repeated attempts at rehab have failed, and the person just truly is a shell of themselves and feels absolutely zero love for the person in active addiction. Um, Narcissists, and I really can't stand labels and I can't stand using them, but I hang out with a lot of great psychologists because I incorporate them in my work, and there's lots of collaborative um, groups that practice divorce in this manner. They bring in a neutral psychologist, and I've been schooled by them that the other two scenarios that are hopeless right off the bat is the person having full-blown narcissistic personality disorder or pedophilia. Those areas, an addict unable to be in recovery, true narcissistic personality disorder, and true pedophilia
Right.
or physical abuse, those things you can't come back from. And they're proven that I'm going to leave out the physical violence for a minute. Just let's focus on the other three. The other three, it's been clinically proven they can't be helped.
Yeah.
They can learn to modify their behavior. And if the person at the brink of despair and about to get a divorce, if they could have the, hear from the other spouse in a professional venue like a psychologist's office, hear is what I'm willing to do to modify my behavior so we don't have to get a divorce.
Right.
That's super intense and would take a really long time.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there's definitely some non-starters. I would agree with you. And you can't be in a physically or even mentally abusive relationship that doesn't change. And people say, gosh, should I stay? Well, if if the perpetrator or the person that's engaged in that behavior or has that sickness or that addiction isn't able or isn't willing to change. There's ability and there's desire. A lot of us have desire. Hey, I'd like to work out 5 days a week,
Right.
but I just,
Whether you do that or
I
not.
just don't know if I'm able, right?
so what a luxury
There's
that
an
would
ability
be.
and a desire issue, right? And no one should hang out. So if the person that you're with doesn't have the ability and or the desire, you got to make a decision and say, if I'm not willing to live in this behavior for the rest of my life, you're either gonna have a break with, we're uncoupling, or that person has to have a breakthrough. So in absence of the breakthrough, like you mentioned, with all the counseling and things that need to be there, if there's not a breakthrough, there's got to be a break with. And anyway, I mean, Andrea, I know that it feels like we've barely scratched the surface, but we've had some great discussions. And I think, if I had to kind of wrap it up, so, and I'm going to ask you to fill in the blank to give us your final thought on this before we learn more about you and tell people how they can connect with you. The key to somebody avoiding divorce is, what would your 1 or 2 sentence answer be to that question based on your practice and based on your experience? The key to avoiding divorce is what?
Not to be plagiaristic, but communication, truth, and honesty.
Communication, truth, and honesty. Beautiful.
And you guys nailed that years ago. So, but I've always felt that way. I've always felt that is true. There have been so many divorces that I thought if the person were not so prideful, not so angry, not so committed to a path of vengeance, there would be a chance for the two. It's all who they are as a person and the willingness and the reason for the unwillingness is typically pride, I have found.
Gotcha.
On one party's part or the other.
So great. Well, if so, I appreciate your answer to that, and our listeners do too. So if people want to get in touch with you, Andrea, if they want to say, gosh, I might need some help, or I might need some direction, or I'm not sure if I'm there, where can people find you?
I own and run the Morgan Divorce Law Firm. I'm very proud of my firm. We are a boutique firm. There's never 24 hours that go by if a client wants to speak or email with us, or we have a very strict 24-hour rule with that, because the client is going through the worst thing they ever have in their lives, generally speaking. And we have a lot of empathy for that. So I have a website at morgandivorcelaw.com. A simple Google search of Morgan Divorce Law Firm will bring up my YouTube channel, will bring up all the articles I've written, most of which are how to avoid divorce, how not to have to hire me, has been my focus on my YouTube channel, on my articles, on my website, helpful articles on my website. And
so some good resources there, it sounds like.
Not hard to find and an easy name to remember. Andrea Morgan.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's been great having you.
Thank you, Kim.
Today. And if you're out there listening to us and you are not happy in your relationship, or you're even contemplating divorce, I hope you'll reach out to us. We are here to help. We are here to offer you coaching and assistance through that period of time, because we do believe that everybody is deserving of having an incredible relationship, deserving and capable. So please reach out to.
You can go to MatthewPHoffman.com, and we have a free relationship assessment call and lots of resources and tools that complement the good work that Andrea is doing. We'd love to talk to you. And we love having conversations with people like Andrea because she's got the experience, and we are working in the same vineyard and singing kind of the same song about things that you can do to keep that relationship alive and active. And as we sign off today, we want you all to remember just one thing, and that's that happily ever after does not just happen, it's on purpose. So, Andrea, thanks for joining us today. And we are
Thank you for having me, Matt. Kim, it's a pleasure. Keep doing the good work. I, without reservation, recommend to appropriate clients to join you on your quest to keeping divorce out of the picture. It's just healthier for everybody.
our pleasure. We will look forward to sharing and talking more with you soon.
Thank you.
That's all we've got for this episode of the Kickass Couples Podcast. If you like the content of this show, you'll love Matthew's newly released book, Kickass Husband, Winning at Life, Marriage, and Sex. To receive a digital mini book of quotes and images from the book, all you have to do is rate this show and leave a review in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen. Then email us a screenshot of your review at podcast@kickasscouplespodcast.com, and we'll get it over to you right away. Until next time, remember, happily ever after doesn't just happen, it's on purpose.